Hello, welcome to my new video where I will introduce you to this coordinate system made by Descartes. Descartes is a genius mathematician that lived in the 17th century, and he published his first work in 1617 year after the birth of Jesus Christ, and at the parallel time, the Fermat, the person that proposed one of the millennial questions about primes, the theorem of Fermat, and he also he didn't publish, but he also wrote a book about coordinate systems, but in three dimensions. But it's even more interesting because a French cleric, Nicolas, used the coordinate system even before, a long time before Fermat and Descartes. But Descartes is widely known as the person that first introduced the Cartesian system, the coordinate system. Okay, so let's talk about coordinate systems. So let's see, math in Europe was widely used. There were different mathematicians, but it wasn't very efficient. A lot of people talked about math, a lot of people used math, but math was always not expressed in succulent, in simple forms like this: 2x plus 5 equal 10, and you can solve it. Now, in this age, using those equations, you can solve it in exactly 3 steps, or even 2 steps if you want it. But then, you didn't say 2x plus 5 equal 10, you imagined some kind of something where our 2 times something and the sum with 5 is equal to 10. All math problems were expressed only in textual form. There wasn't any kind of equation. It was everything in text form. This is why math was very slow in Europe in those times, because a lot of people couldn't exactly couldn't solve those equations in a fast way. All of it depended on how good your head was, not how good the equations that you could fall on were. So in 17th century, a lot of people, especially Viet, that introduced Viet formulas for quadratics that we'll talk about later in this course, introduced the variables and a very second form of writing different variables, different equations, linear equations, and it completely changed the face of math. All of a sudden, Pascal, all of a sudden Newton's calculus, vector spaces, matrices, every part of math started to just explode from 17th century. It started to grow, and one of the most important things were the Cartesian coordinate system that is widely used all over Earth to this time in every computer graphing simulator, in every statistic. You always use coordinate system of Cartesian. Okay, so I talked about coordinate Cartesian system. What is it? So if you you probably seen those kinds of statistics where people report, here we would have the time. So for example, we would have the time from before the Second World War, so for example 38, to our time, so 2024, and here we could give our second variable. That would be the population. So how did the population change over time? So of course it grew from before the war till now. It's still growing very strongly. And here we have something that you can call a function. Function we could function is something that takes our input. Our input here is time, so any year from 38 of 20th century to now, to present, and it can produce a value called P, and P is the amount of people in this year. So for example, here this amount of people, here this amount of people. It returns to you your value based on the time you inputted in. Okay, but this is just an introduction to functions. But what Cartesian coordinate system is much more deeper, much more beautiful. A Cartesian coordinate system is something that depends on two variables, widely used, x and y. And here we have an origin point. It's important to remember. Origin point is a point at which the coordinate system starts. And here we have something that you probably already know, the number line. On the number line you have all the numbers, all the real numbers, from 0 to plus infinity, and from 0 to negative infinity. And here you also have numbers, and those numbers symbolize our coordinates. Those are our values. Here we have our arguments. And for example, here we have a point with coordinates 1 over 1. Here we can have a coordinate that has coordinates 3 and a 2. And it's important to notice that coordinates in Cartesian system, it always starts with x, then y. Always. Very important, always, because otherwise you would mispronounce it and you would get the height of 3 and the vertical of 2. But this is not the same coordinates. Here you have a different coordinate, 2 and a 3. So coordinates always start with x and end with y. Okay, that's all for today's lessons. Thank you very much. Next, I will introduce you how to graph different linear equations on the Cartesian plane.